welcome to Escaping Kasterborous, the podcast where we rewatch, reminisce, and review everything Doctor Who from 2005 to present. My name is Rich, and I'm joined by someone who not even Atmos can reduce her toxic emissions to zero. It's Amy.
Yeah.
I've had that one in the bank. Like, I was waiting to make a fart joke. So I'm proud of that one.
Yeah, I think I'm quite pleased with that as well, actually. I would happily have that on my tombstone.
You heard it here first, folks. The day that I never want ever to happen, ever to come, we're going to put the Atmos logo on Amy's gravestone to really confuse people. Imagine being that much of a Doctor Who fan of such a niche thing to have on your gravestone.
You're walking through a cemetery and all of a sudden you just see Atmos on a gravestone and everyone's like, what?
Well, this took a turn very quickly. Happy New Year to you all.
Yeah,
Happy
hello.
2024. We hope you had a lovely New Year, a lovely festive season if that's what you celebrate. Hope you've had a good time. Hope you've all eaten a lot of food and pooped it all out by now and getting back onto good habits, I suppose.
I've kind of forgotten about how much we ate over Christmas.
Yeah, it didn't... This is the first Christmas, I think, that I've actually, it hit me worse than I thought. In terms of the food, we both were pretty bad after Christmas, honestly.
We majorly, family-wise, both our families kind of, majorly overcatered this year food-wise, so...
And it was just, that grey area, the no man's land between Christmas and New Year. It's just, not fun.
I ate about 3 days worth of picnic food after Christmas and Boxing Day, and then we had our New Year's Eve party where we ate more food.
We had so much. We had food left over from both Christmases, and then we ordered 6 gigantic pizzas on top of it. Don't get me wrong, it was all baller, but it was a lot of food.
Yeah,
and I was having an aneurysm trying to keep on top of cooking it all. Everyone else had arrived, everyone's drinking and had been happy. And I'm just in the kitchen, stressing my tits off that I can't get everything
It's
cooked
fine,
properly.
yeah. I was there to keep you calm. Everything was okay.
You tried your best.
I did. Well, that's because you're just a stressy bugger. I tried.
Cooking, I love cooking. I mean, I know this is just literally emptying stuff onto a tray and shoving it in the oven. But if cooking goes wrong, I get uncharacteristically angry if I screw cooking up. And I'm the
same with cakes. If cakes go wrong, I have to step away for 4 days before I'm able to come back to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Mad.
Well,
anyway.
welcome everybody. Welcome back to Escaping Kasterborous. Happy New Year to you all. 2024 kicks off, and it's only the 28th of January before we finally got around to getting the next episode in. You lot have been waiting since when was it? When did we upload the episode of of Planet of the Ood? My before I open the description to fully give me the specific date, it just says 6 months ago.
Oh dear.
July 7th was when we did Planet of the Ood. That's ridiculous.
No.
Yes.
Oh no.
I mean, I think we said this in our last episode, which is obviously the big the big wedding and life episode. And we said, we definitely did pencil in and schedule all through Christmas and stuff to get more episodes done, and we just didn't. But,
I can't believe we haven't recorded since July.
Well, technically we recorded in November, but not an actual episode. Yeah. Yeah,
oh God.
We explained all of this. If you've not listened to our 2 hour and 21-minute episode of EK, the last one where we talked about where we've been, our life update, and how our wedding was, if you watch it on YouTube, you can see all the pictures as well. It was a tough end of the year, and it's now we've actually hit January. It's starting to actually smooth out a bit. We've actually starting to hit that stride that we'd initially hoped to have hit after the wedding, but we didn't for reasons I think we did discuss.
We did.
Potential redundancy on that episode.
I'm sure we would have done because we were recording it quite soon.
It was in the middle of all of it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think we even knew whether you had a job at that point or not.
No, we didn't. And luckily for me, I do.
He does.
If you are people who are keeping up with the games industry, you are fellow gamers, tips hat. You've seen that the industry is in a bit of a pickle at the moment. And by that, I mean, they're literally just, let's lay everyone off. for funsies to make a short-term financial gain, long-term kick in the dick, really. And to put it into perspective, this has been going on throughout the course of last year. Frontier got hit in October that they had to make that call. And they laid off, overall, so the industry laid off X number of thousands of people over the course of 2023. And now we're not even through January yet, and we've almost reached half of that number in 28 days in 2024 of layoffs. The biggest culprit is Xbox laying off nearly 2,000 employees from Activision Blizzard King.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a bit of a crap time in the games industry. So I'm sitting, as an employee of the games industry, just kind of watching all this happen around. Like, it literally has happened to me. I was lucky not to lose my job,
which is
but it's still
ridiculous
ongoing.
because I was listening to the radio, I think it was just before Christmas or just after, and they said that actually gaming and music were the two biggest profitable industries in 2023.
The industry,
So,
I can't remember what the exact number was, but it's something in the tens of billions in terms of revenue last year.
It's mad.
So, it's there are some places that have been more justified in their reasonings. Not that just getting rid of people is ever a good a good reason, but there are also companies that have just gone, oh, this is what the industry's doing. Guess we'll shave off a few salaries and bin off loads of people. So it's a bit of a crap one, but.
But we're not here to talk about that.
For me personally, I'm doing all right. But it's still a wider conversation. It's still ongoing at some places, and it's a whole thing.
And obviously, the benefit of my job is that the NHS will never fire me because otherwise,
even less will get done.
I mean, I say they won't fire me, like I'm not that sort of employee. I mean, make me redundant, because the NHS don't do redundancies. They've got no staff anyway.
It's good fun. It's all fun. How about let's talk about the Sontaran Stratagem and the Poison Sky, because it's been 6 months since we were supposed to actually get this episode done.
Whoops.
Hello everyone, welcome back.
Sorry,
if you are rejoining us after this hiatus to actually get back to Who, then welcome back. So airing back on the 26th of April 2008, and then it would have been, what would have been? That would have been the start of May, wouldn't it? First broadcast, the 3rd of May 2008. Happy birthday, Amy! You've just turned
my birthday 13.
13.
13.
Yeah, 13.
Boys.
Good grief.
What an absolutely awful state that is. Like, how old are we?
We turn 30 next year, Amy. Oh,
everything's
boy.
Fine.
It's been a while since, both this episode airing and us actually recording it. But yeah, the Sontarans are back in play for the first time in NuWho, and that's obviously the big hook of this story. We were waiting to see, which returning enemy would be coming back, and the Sontarans, ahead of the Daleks and the Cybermen, would arguably be ranked sort of third in terms of classic villains that we're bound to make a comeback in the new series, I guess.
I mean, I didn't know anything about them until...
nor did I when I watched this episode.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, we were 13, or I'd literally just turned 13, and you turned 13 the next day.
Yeah, I did.
So, I don't think there would have really been much cause for us to have known anything about it. I mean, my dad, like I've mentioned before, did watch a bit of classic Who, but it was never...
As did my parents, yeah.
Never the obsessive kind of watching, so not like us.
Yeah, I was going to say. Oh, dear. But yeah, so Sontarans are back in play, but not only that, we also have Miss Martha Jones is back in play as well. And, she kind of opens up the episode, or at least she kind of leads us in from the cold open into the titles after we see that freelance journalist get drowned by Atmos and the Sontarans, and, the nice little death hook that they like to do as the opening sequence of an episode. We bring the Doctor and Donna back to Earth via Martha Jones, who's now taken up a job at Units, and it opens up the whole conversation of, is this what you do? Is this you make them soldiers? I like how the Doctor just brushed that off.
Yeah, it's kind of like a...
It's like, not...
He could have
everybody...
just been like, not really, actually.
Yeah.
She just kind of had that mentality anyway.
There is, I mean, when you think about it, there is already a parallel being drawn to what's said in the end of the series when it comes to the Stolen Earth and Journey's End, because Davros basically says the exact same thing to the Doctor when you've got everybody with their explosive devices ready to nuke the Dalek Crucible. And the same thing plays up again. So it does kind of preempt what comes at the end of the series. But it's like Martha as a character, it makes a lot of sense that she went in that direction. And it also reintroduces Eunice as well, which I think, I can't remember whether we get sniffs of them, I think, throughout the course of the first 3 series. Because obviously it's been so long since we've been recording this, and also I haven't been watching any Doctor Who apart from the new series in the interim. I don't want to. I want to come back to it when we come to episodes of EK. So I've not been back, but this is the first time Unit really do get a big center stage thing going on.
Yeah, I don't think I remember anything sort of properly featuring them before this point that we've watched so far.
Yeah. So they're now fully in play, but let's focus on Martha for a sec, because one thing that I did really like about this episode is that while obviously again it's kind of that precursor to the Stolen Earth and Journey's End, like bringing Martha back, because obviously a lot of people come back in that 2-part finale, but it further kind of contextualizes the world that the world that the Whoniverse is currently in the first Russell T Davies era. You know, this goes to show this is the first time we've seen a companion after their time with the Doctor. You could argue Donna kind of as well, because obviously we had her in one episode, but that runaway bride Donna is a very, very different Donna to the one we have
Very
now.
much, yeah,
so
we've
I don't really
discussed
think you can make that comparison. But Martha, on the other hand, yeah, it's a bit of a, not a heel turn, that's not the right phrase, but you know, her characterization has changed a bit because she's now a fully fledged Doctor. She's working with Unit. She's exactly where she needs to be. Where she kind of should be, I guess. It makes a lot of sense. It's why she's gone through the ranks so quickly, and the fact that, you know, if you've even had a sniff of the Doctor, that's it. You're like, you know, you're getting
Unit is
promotion.
Like, come to us.
I mean, it's literally the same thing right now. You know, we're having the parallels drawn to the Giggle. Like, we've already got Unit are back in play. Donna's probably landed herself a job. I'd love to see that Donna gets that job. Obviously, Rose Noble is at Unit, because we see her in the trailer for series 14. I'm not calling it season 1. I'm not
series
being being an arse about it, but it's just for the sake of understanding it's season 14, Ncuti's first series. I get why they want to reboot it, but contextually there's no.
It's not really a
point.
Reboot though, is it? Because realistically, like it's not like
just
they took
another
a big
era.
break like they did in the 80s. It's just a different. It's just a no. Again, well, I say new showrunner. It's a previous showrunner, but like it's a new series of a showrunner. So, but like at least that was one thing that Chibbers didn't do. Like, he didn't start calling it Series 1. I would think that would have been, like, the straw that broke
really
the camel's
pretentious,
back.
yeah. Absolutely. But yeah, I really do enjoy how we get that look at a companion post-Doctor, because the only time we've had that so far has been seeing Sarah Jane Smith in School Reunion, and that was 2 series ago by this point, because School Reunion was very early on.
Wasn't she?
Yeah, that was David Tennant's first series. So
speaking of Rose,
we'll get to Rose. Because that's in the Poison Sky. So we will focus on that when we get to it. I mean, obviously this is a 2-parter, so hopefully you've watched both parts. But we have Martha, you know, with Units sniffing out Atmos that's a bit sus. You know, there's always that element of this is all too, you know, philanthropic. You know, there's must be something iffy about the fact that they can just reduce carbon to 0. This is a bit sus, surely.
yeah.
And we get Unit back in play, and I know that we've had some questions. I've had to dig out, like, I've got so many tabs open of just all the places where questions have come through. Because it's been so long since we did it. I'm trying to find all of these questions, because there was somebody specifically. Was it on the Spotify thing? There is one of them. Okay, yeah. So Atticus Burrows, while we're just on Martha, asks, do you think Martha's character has grown or done a U-turn after the last of the Time Lords?
Good question, because I can't remember what the Last of the Time Lords is.
The Last of the Time Lords was the Master and like the year that never was, Martha travelling the Earth and
all
getting
of that lot,
the gun in 4 parts to kill the Master and all that
I'm
rubbish.
very bad at linking episode titles to the content therein. I'm fine at remembering the episodes themselves. Do you know what? I don't think she has. I think that year for Martha was very, very enlightening, was very kind of, you know, if this is the life I lead, then I might as well lead it, rather than let it lead me. And I think it's like the whole thing with her family was, I guess, maybe the reason why she wanted to work for UNIT, because she wanted to be able to kind of avoid those sorts of things happening in future or prevent it. Or I don't feel like it's a U-turn as such, because during that year she was also kind of a soldier. She was just a very different kind. And she obviously just didn't work for UNIT. But I wouldn't say that this feels like, to me anyway, it just kind of feels like her character continued along the vein that it was already growing to. It doesn't really seem like she's changed all that much in a way, because if it was a U-turn, I feel like a U-turn is kind of going back on yourself, isn't it? It's kind of reverting and being very like, whereas when we first met Martha, she was kind of just like a bit of a drool, weren't she? Like, I mean, she was good at being a doctor.
Yeah.
And she was very sort of quick to jump in and help people, which has always been her personality type. But the focus of Martha's character to begin with was very smitten, very like, I'm in love with you immediately. And we all know how much I enjoyed that. And so I feel like the fact that there's been, obviously, first thing Donna says is like, you can't have, like, you know, you must have got over him considering you're engaged and all that sort of stuff. And there's jokes made about it throughout the episode, about her really being over him, if she's calling him dad. And I feel like that's kind of like a testament to the progression that Martha's character has gone through.
Calling him dad?
Yeah, you know, when she goes, I feel like I'm a child wearing my dad's clothes, and Donna says, well, you're definitely getting over him if you're calling him dad.
Hello,
no, she
Daddy.
doesn't call him daddy.
It's good to see you.
Let's not go that far. But yeah, that's my opinion anyway.
No, I think you're bang on. I think a U-turn would have been that she would have just gone completely down a different direction. Like, imagine she, I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to think about how she could like milk it in a different direction. You know, she tried to become famous by making up, saying, I was abducted, I was doing this and all this sort of stuff. You know, not so much like doing it as a, say we had, if you remember the daughter of, I think this is at the end of time, you know, when at the end of David's regeneration, when he's like going around and saying hello and goodbye to all of his previous companions and people, and there's the daughter of the woman that he fell in love with as John Smith, and she's writing books about like her grandmother's stories, almost like the opposite to that. So rather than Martha taking this idea that all this stuff that happened during Last of the Time Lords and like novelizing it and like making a living off of telling these stories of hope and you know, triumphing against you know, an antagonist as powerful as the Master and so on.
Yeah.
Instead, she's like going on, I don't know, daytime TV and trying to peddle some rubbish, and she's trying to become like famous, like making a quick buck or something like that. Like, that's what I would consider to be a U-turn. Or she's just decided to go, you know, I don't want to be a doctor anymore. Screw this. I'm going to become, I don't know, something less desirable, or, you know, something more frowned upon, I suppose. So I would say that you do get this progression to Martha, obviously, as we've already said, moving into UNIT and doing that makes a hell of a lot of sense for her.
It does.
But at the same time, I don't feel we get, because she gets, you know, cloned and she's stuck in a rack and whatever, then we don't really get to see much of her. So I'd argue that we don't really know how much she's moved on as a character so much, because we don't have a lot of time with her. The time we spend with her, apart from her commenting on, you know, oh yeah, Donna's good, oh yeah, he's so skinny. Otherwise, she's doing her job.
Yeah. But then I think also that's really the point of Martha's character, isn't it? Is like she's kind of evolved into, I guess, the sort of person that like lives for her job, because a job like that, it would overtake you. It would be much more of a all-encompassing scenario. It's not like you kind of go into the office 9 till 5 and come home at the end of the day. It is literally like an all hands on deck at all times sort of thing. So, but I understand what you mean. I think the real kind of testament to Martha's character comes in the next episode, because we obviously get to see her in that as well, which obviously we won't go into too much detail about now, but I do feel like that is really the time where we get to see her sort of evolution in terms of how she's adapted as a character.
Like, I don't know how much you remember of the Doctor's daughter, but I know that there is the arc that Martha goes down during that episode really gives the audience this time with her. So that's going to be really good to explore next time. So really that kind of the question of how Martha has evolved really comes next time with the Doctor's daughter. So we'll cover that when we get to it. So units is another obviously a big part of this, as we've already said. You know, the units are finally back in play. Units obviously back in play in the modern era. I say modern era, where we are now. Units are very much back in play. They have been since the Power of Three. That was when we first met Kate Stewart with the cubes, the cube invasion. That was what year was that? That was series 7.
So what? 2000
2013.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, it was 2013 because it was the year of Day of the Doctor. So yeah, that was the first time we saw Unit. But otherwise, they've been you didn't see them as much during Matt Smith's era. They went a bit quiet, apart from like now, and then I think they do crop up again in End of Time, maybe.
But then I feel like that's probably purposefully done, because if Unit got involved in every single thing, then it would get a bit
tiresome.
Yeah.
But it's nice to see them back all the same, because obviously it's an iconic part of Doctor Who. And the Possible Astronaut asks, what's your opinion on the portrayal of Unit in the modern show?
The modern show is in...
comparatively to how they were in the classic. And I think just generally, I think people will still consider Modern Who to be Modern Who. It's still NuWho. I think there will be people who have been directed to say, you need to consider the Shooty era another era, but I think... Why?
Oh, no, sorry. I just wasn't sure whether when they said modern, whether they meant like the most recent iteration of Unit.
I would just say the modern era just means generally.
NuWho as a whole, right?
I mean, I've only seen a handful of episodes with Unit in the classic era.
Yeah, I can't comment on this.
But I know that I think they wanted to take like sniffs of Torchwood and sort of intertwine it with Unit, because obviously the Doctor's not been with Unit for a good while, and I think the Doctor had all these concerns, understandably, because obviously he wasn't too keen on Torchwood, even when Jack was running it, as we saw in The Last of the Time Lords, in that 3-part finale, that when Jack was part of Torchwood, he was a bit like, bit dismissive of you now, Jack. But, obviously Unit were going down particular routes that the Doctor didn't agree with. So Unit being treated as a potentially more of a foil, and the Doctor pulling his weight, like when the commander says, you don't have authority to speak on Earth's behalf, and the Doctor's like, yeah, I do. I'm the Doctor.
I learned that a long time ago.
Yeah, exactly. Like they almost are a bit of an asset and a foil to the Doctor, at least in this episode. I can't quite remember exactly how often they do crop up until we get, the Kate Stewart era. But
we love Kate Stewart.
We do. We stan. But they are that, like I said, a foil to the Doctor in this 2-parter.
Yeah.
They do find themselves being an asset and also a pain in the arse at the same time.
I kind of don't even know if they are really an asset, though. I mean, like, if you kind of think about their actual involvement, the only thing that they do right is invade the Atmos factory to find the actual, like, cloning station and teleportation and whatever. But, I mean, like, otherwise, the only real person who does anything worthwhile is Ross out of Unit.
Ross.
Like, I mean, yeah, poor Ross, bless him, what a cutie. He's also a good-looking lad as well. I wonder what he looks like now. I'd be interested to know. But yeah, he's just, I don't know, like it kind of feels like the whole purpose of UNIT is just to put up this like battalion front to be a bit like, this is war and this is how war goes. Like they are an army, for lack of a better word, but I don't feel like in the latest versions of UNIT, and by latest I mean like really recent, like the ones we got in the Tenant Regeneration 14 story, they feel less like an army and more like an intelligent task force, which is what they are. Whereas in this, they definitely take on that kind of like army, like you said, brigadier. Obviously, I know he's not in it, but like it is very much that old school army feel, which I feel like is just quite representative of 2008 Doctor Who. Like they had that kind of feel with UNIT style.
They kind of brought the grit.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, and I feel like the only purpose of them in this episode was just to kind of, I guess, be like a rebuttal to the fact that you can't beat the Sontarans with war strategy because they will just outright defeat you. And
like I said, they're like a foil to the Doctor's approach, but they, as you say, they do have their own benefits in that they are the brute force that can actually push back against the Sontarans as and when it was actually... Whether you could argue it was right to do so, you don't quite know, but the Doctor did need to get back inside and get back to the basement where Martha was.
Well, I guess it was kind of right to do so because realistically it's defensive, isn't it? Like, they're being attacked.
The Doctor could have done a cheeky little sneak in, but then we'd have had a sneak in parallel to Donna sneaking around the Sontaran ship again. It's like, if you're going to have all these guns and all these people, all these extras, you might as well use them.
Yeah, and like, it's supposed to be a comment on warfare, so I feel like the purpose of sending the soldiers into battle... Soldiers? Can't talk. The soldiers into battle was to kind of like... continue this dialect on the Sontarans being like the masters of war, you know?
Yeah. And it's obviously you can read the undertones of, this is the default human approach is attack back. And then it's like, even if the Doctor has pointed out, and it's been made abundantly clear by, already the people who have been lasered and stuff by the Sontarans, that you do not have a chance to win. So stop trying, you moron. While we're just on UNIT and on Ross as well, I just had a quick look. I mean, yes, he still looks good. Christian Cook. Yes, Christian Cook. Christian Cook. And fun fact, Mel B is his cousin. Because, yeah, that's the big thing on his Wikipedia page. Mel B is his cousin.
What?
Fun fact. Sure. We have that wonderful moment after they've been to the Rattigan Academy and they are trying to escape. The Doctor does the cheeky, reverse psychology on the Atmos system to stop. Sorry, Atmos, not Atmos system. It's ingrained. Calling it the Atmos system. It's just Atmos.
Do you know what? He looks exactly the same.
Yeah.
I've just Googled him.
While I ramble, Amy's going to Google pictures of Christian Cook to simp over.
I mean, I don't feel like he's my type now, really.
Well, no, because I'm your type.
Well, sadly you are.
You poor soul.
I like nerdy weirdos.
Balding men, yeah.
Apparently.
When we have them escaping Rattigan Academy and the reverse psychology on Atmos, and they dive out of the car after they manages to stop it from driving into the water, apparently that sequence was supposed to end with the whole Jeep going kablooey, but there was a logistical reason as to why they couldn't. I can't quite remember.
Finances, budget.
It could have been they didn't have an army style Jeep that they could afford to blow up, or they didn't have like where they were shooting, where they weren't allowed to do it, or something or other. But so instead they did that little pitiful queef of an explosion out of the sat.
Tiny explosion.
So obviously they then played for comedic effects, which worked really, really well because normally you'd be expecting this over dramatic. You've had all the army coming in, lots of guns in play, lots of lasers and stuff, and then you just have this pitiful little explosion. Like, I think that's great fun. So because just rolling back a little bit, let's talk about old Ratty, old Luke Rattigan.
Good old Ratty. Who
Ryan
looks like
Sampson.
a rat.
Is he American? No, he's not American. He's English. Okay.
So that was quite a good American accent.
It's a good American. It fooled me. I didn't know whether he would have actually been an American actor, but no. Rattigan.
What does he look like now?
I would probably say exactly the same.
What's his name?
Ryan Sampson.
Ryan Sampson. Is he George Sampson's brother?
No.
Oh my god, he's literally like exactly the same. Like not a shred of change.
Yep. I mean, you can see it with some people. You see that they don't really change how they. I mean, Amy's literally exhibit A of this. Amy
I am an
exactly
example
the
of
same.
this.
Yeah, Rattigan is quite. I again, it's another foil to the Doctor that I love about this two-parter is that we have another very, very clever character. And when you compare it to somebody like Dr. Yana, and obviously it was the Master really, but like when you consider Dr. Yana as a very, very smart character, and you like experiencing, meeting the Doctor and getting to nerd out with him, there's such a contrast with Luke Rattigan because obviously he's very, very cold to the Doctor. Now, when we were watching this afternoon, I'd forgotten that there was the scene when Rattigan says Doctor and the Sontaran General Stahl goes. He has that look on his face like he's been bitch slapped with a frozen poo. Because that's I don't know why that was my analogy, but whatever.
Space docking.
You probably would be.
Anyway, carry on.
Amy Hudson. This is a Christian Minecraft server and a family show.
If you don't know what space docking means, do not Google it.
Don't Google it, please. Google pictures of Christian Cook and Ryan Sampson instead. You've thrown me right off now. God damn it.
So you were talking about Luke announcing he was called the Doctor and what's it being
when he was
slapped.
being really, really cold to the Doctor turning up at his academy, I initially thought it's because I immediately thought, he's obviously he said that General Watsit had radioed ahead to say that he was on the way, and I figured that he would go to the Sontarans as a good little boy and say, "Oh, I've got a visitor coming. Should I be worried? He's called the Doctor," and they've gone, "Oh, the Doctor!" And that's why he was being difficult. Then you kind of when I remembered that wasn't the case, and especially when for viewers they've seen that the Sontarans weren't aware the Doctor was about until Rattigan mentioned it. He's just being cold and arsey because there's another genius. Either for two reasons, because he might work out what he's doing, or he just doesn't like people who might upstage him. I mean, and
that's totally it. No, that it's definitely the second one because realistically, he is a complete and utter selfish, stuck-up, conceited knob. I mean, you just got to look at the way that he kind of like handles his academy and speaks to everybody, and it is that immediacy of he feels threatened because there's somebody else in the room with the same level of intelligence, if not more intelligence than him, and he does not like that. Like, yes, he was nurturing all these clever people to be like to come with him to this new planet. But you see it in that moment, even after they abandon him, the only thing that he has to hold on to is by shouting at them, "See, it just proves it, I'm cleverer than you."
Yeah.
And it's like, that's literally his whole ethos is, I'm the clever one, nobody else is as clever as me. And I think when the Doctor walks in and goes, "Oh my God, I've seen all this stuff before, I know what you're doing, this is all like," it's almost like he's feeling like the Doctor is going around going, "Oh, you've got that stuff and that stuff and that stuff and that stuff," and it makes him feel quite primitive when actually he is, well, arguably one of the cleverest people on the planet. It pales in comparison to the Doctor just purely because of the level of experience that the Doctor has and intelligence that is kind of unmatched because of just the worlds he's seen. But yeah, no, it's I don't even think it's that he's worked out what he's doing. I think he purely is just like, how the hell can there be somebody cleverer or as clever as me? I don't like this.
I mean, it's like when he reveals that it's the Doctor and the Sontarans are like, "Oh, we have an enemy of the Doctor," blah, 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 blah. I almost wonder whether he took a bit of solace in the fact that it's like, oh, he was an alien. That doesn't count then, because I'm still the smartest human. Like, he still has this, cold demeanor towards the Doctor generally and towards humanity anyway. But
superiority complex.
Yeah, superiority complex. But it's like the Doctor read him like a book. Like, the moment he's, it's not the first time the Doctor's seen technology and he's gone, oh my God, it's this and it's this and this is brilliant. That's amazing. Like I said, compare it directly to Dr. Yana and how excited the Doctor was, and how excited, the Doctor and Yana were to meet each other and get to nerd out over things before, obviously, he's the master. And I completely lost where I was going with that point, and I'm really annoyed now.
You were saying about when he was holding this air of knowledge, and he was like, oh, it doesn't count if you're alien and all that.
Yeah, and how, because the fact that Rattigan just kind of stood there and had that, he had also been slapped by the same frozen poo. He was, the Doctor read him straight away then, and obviously as when the Doctor said Atmos system, and he goes off on one, and he had the refers to Ross as a grunt, and the moment he said, no one has ever said no to you, have they? And while we probably don't know people who are that clever, we've all known people who are like that. They can't be wrong.
Can't be told no.
Can't be told no. They're never wrong. They have this superiority complex, regardless of where it's come from, whether it's like if he's that clever, then not to say you're allowed to be an arsehole, but, there is arguably a justification as to why you're a douche. But we've all known people who are like that. So there is this kind of...
And those people aren't even necessarily clever.
Well, most of the time, they're not. Or at least they think they are. We can very much... we can relate to how... the Doctor feels in that situation, how Ross feels in that situation, hell, even how the rest of the students feel in that situation. Like, regardless of whether you're there to learn, if you think your superior is an arsehole, then, you're not going to respect them, and you'll kind of take any kind of, like, bump in the road, and you go, yeah, you know what? I'm good. I'm out. Yeah. I mean, we've all worked for people, haven't we? We've had bosses that suck. And
I'm sure everybody has.
Yeah, we've all who had superiority complexes beyond, being, a decent human being. We all know what that's like. And sadly, while we do get Rattigan at the end of the two-parter, obviously taking the Doctor's place in nuking the Sontaran ship, we don't feel any sympathy for him. It's a nice everything's wrapped up in a nice little bow. Not only do we get to keep the Doctor as we know and love him, Rattigan, he does do something noble, all things considered, but he does also get himself blown to smithereens. It's kind of like he's almost like this parallel to Adam in series 1 after Dalek. Like rather than getting shot by a Dalek because we don't like him. He left Rose behind and he's just a bit of a douche. Instead, we take him on a journey, and he acts even more of a douche this time. Yeah. Russell doesn't kind of put us down. I mean, it wasn't Russell T Davies that wrote it. Helen Rayner wrote it. We don't get to go down that route with Rattigan. We get to see him blow himself to smithereens, but still do something clever with his life in the process.
But do you know what? Also, though, is like, so I was actually thinking when we were watching the second, I think it's in the second episode, when everybody abandons him. And he goes up to the ship and he's like, I failed, like the students have all left, they're not coming. And I can't remember which one of the Sontarans it is.
It was Stahl, the leader.
Goes, oh, we've lost our target practice. And they do that whole kind of like sequence with Luke where he's like, you promised this, that and the other kind of thing. And then he goes back into the teleport to save himself being killed anyway. And he kind of lays on the floor and cries, doesn't he? He has that moment of humanity. And in my head at that exact moment, I was thinking, not Doctor Who trying to make us feel sorry for a complete and utter tiswas. Like, I just couldn't see. I get it. Like, I get the idea to give him an ounce of humanity so that his sacrifice at the end proves he was a good person, really. It's like, yeah, but was he, though? Because I'm not being funny, but, like, there's a difference between is it a martyr? Are they the people that would sacrifice themselves for the greater good or whatever?
Whether he would want to be seen as a martyr because he saved everybody.
Like, there's a difference between a martyr and a decent human being. I mean, like, I personally would consider myself a decent human being. But I also would not be the first person to take an explosive device off somebody and blow myself to smithereens for the good of the earth, because I'm a coward. I like living. I don't really want to die, and if somebody else can do it, sure, let them go ahead. But that doesn't mean I'm not a bad person. It also doesn't mean that because he did that he is a good person. Like, there's no kind of moment where you see him changing because of the fact that he wants to save people. He purely changes because he has been bested and because he has been tricked. And so then he's there thinking, I'm not actually as smart as I thought I was because I've been hoodwinked into believing that this is all going to be X, Y, Z. And then he probably goes, I don't really have family, don't really have friends. What kind of life am I living? Yes, I might be intelligent, but clearly there's nothing for me here. Because he says it throughout the episode, like, Earth's not big enough for me anyway. And he was willing to let the Earth be completely killed off for the sake of him and, 20 other people. And so he's not a good person. Giving him that moment of retribution of crying on the floor of the teleportation thing was just a bit like, why are you crying? Like, you have no emotional connection to this whatsoever. You're only crying because you're angry that somebody, got the better of you. So I kind of don't really care that he gets blown up at the end, because I kind of think, well, bully for you, you saved the world, whoopee, there you go, here's your hero's medal.
I mean, the thing is, if he wanted to be played off like a martyr, there would have been, maybe when Donna says, what are you doing? And he goes, something clever. They added that line of, make sure people know what I did. Then that would be him framing himself as a martyr. But because obviously he explained his whole plan. He was like, hey, ladies in my academy, we're going to get boinking. I've got it all planned out. I had in my head, I don't know whether this is something from a different TV show or a film or something like that. I thought there was a line where he actually points out who he's been, as he said, I've got a whole breeding program. I've made people's matches. The people who are listening, if you know what I mean, I swear that there's something in a similar vein to that, where the main sort of person in that scene has said, me and you, we were going to be the people who were going to breed for this. And that person retorted I ain't shagging you, buddy. I had in my head that happened in this episode, but obviously it doesn't.
Oh, right, no.
But I swear that's happened in some form of media that I've watched, be it a TV show or a film.
Quite possibly.
Where there has been a line like that, but it's we were supposed to be the ones, doing the dirty and repopulating humanity or something like that. If somebody who's listening knows what that is, please comment it, because I'm
sure
racking
there'll
my
be
brain
something.
trying to think of what it is.
It'll be in some sort of post-apocalyptic
stuff.
show or something like that.
Well, actually, all of this conversation actually, works quite well for Michal's question. Apologies if I've pronounced your name very terribly on Twitter. Where they ask, do you think Rattigan earned his redemption through sacrifice?
Nope.
And yeah, no, he did the right thing. But he had all of these people who he fully explained his plan. All these people who were like, well, if he tries to do anything else now, we'll just tell him and say, yeah, we were his students, and we all saw what happened with the Atmos stuff, and it was all very sus. That was, obviously it would be Rattigan anyway, regardless of them turning around and saying, it was him, because it all came from his academy and his work anyway. He knew that he had no life. He couldn't do anymore. He wouldn't get any funding, any attention, any time of day from anybody, anywhere, ever again. So, to put a pretty dark spin on it, if he hadn't have gone and blown himself up, what else would a genius who had nothing he could do have done? Not to dig into the psyche of very intelligent people, but it's yeah, but he keeps getting work, so
Yeah, but the problem isn't because he's... No, we're not going into that. I meant Rattigan. The problem is because Rattigan is one of these people that is there is nothing that can hold me, nothing that can give me that justification, nothing that makes me feel better than knowing that I will be the leader of a new world of intelligent people. There's no way in hell that compares to any other scenario. You just don't know that would ever be a thing that anybody would do, because I've never heard like Elon Musk talking about repopulating a new planet with his intelligence. I mean, it probably would be something ridiculous.
No, he genuinely has been talking about going to Mars.
What? Go, stay there,
yeah,
die,
please
don't
go.
care.
Please go to Mars and don't come back.
But anyway,
do you know what? We haven't actually. Well, I say haven't. We haven't at all, really. 45 minutes in, we haven't talked about the Sontarans. I haven't talked about the Sontarans. Haven't talked about their plot and the actual
Mr. Potato Head.
The threat when it comes to their presence in this two-parter, and there are a bunch of people that have asked the question of, what do you think about how the Sontarans have been done as a returning enemy? I mean, like I said, loads of people have asked this question, so I'm not going to go through and mention everybody that has, but loads of people have been saying, when you compare them to like Davros the Daleks, Cybermen, where do they stack up? How well have they been redone? And to be honest, for me immediately, and this kind of does answer a question that somebody has asked specifically, they have been done quite well. The whole like approach to war didn't falter. We didn't see a little slip up in that regard when they're talking about war and battle and so on, that they stuck to their guns pretty damn well. I mean, you kind of have to. It's their whole character. That's the point.
I was going to say, they are a war race. They are literally clones that exist to fight.
Yeah, exactly. But then the fact that they've been framed in this different way because of the actual plot that they have to convert the Earth into a breeding planet, it's a clever little spin. It's like an unexpected thing, and I think while that kind of approach to that story, that narrative with the Sontarans in play, because obviously we see them in the future. I mean, the next time really, apart from Strax, they were in Doctor Who, was in War of the Sontarans, which I would put down as one of the best episodes of Chibnall's era.
Yeah, but that was because Chibnall didn't write it.
Well, yeah.
Did he?
I don't remember actually whether
I don't think he wrote
I
that
feel
one.
like he did, because I know that he was a big fan of...
I don't know, I just feel like any good episode
Yeah,
of
he did
Chibnall,
write
he
it.
Didn't... Oh,
He
wow,
did write
okay.
it, yeah.
That's quite
I
shocking.
know that he's a big fan of bringing back old enemies.
And that's where he really shone, I think.
Well, exactly, yeah. He did well with the Angels. He did well with the Cybermen.
Angels was definitely not written by Chibnall. I'm sure that Angels episode was written by somebody else.
He was like, I think he was like a co-writer on all of the episodes of Flux. But even then, like, still, it was his era. We'll still attribute it to him. He did very well with the Cybermen, and I liked what he did with the Daleks to a certain point. So this, and people have also asked the question, what the Sontaran design, which do you prefer? Because we've only had two designs. We've got the original ones, and we've got the NuWho ones.
I don't actually know what the original ones look like.
The War of the Sontarans in Flux, they are the original ones.
Oh, okay. Let me have a quick.
And I would, but I know somebody asked that question. I have to try and dig it out now so I can give you a wee little shout out.
Sontarans Classic Who.
Yeah, they look pretty much exactly the same as they do in War of the Sontarans.
They do. The thing is, they look pretty much exactly the same as they do now anyway. It's just obviously that costume developments and stuff and like budgetary developments have allowed for slightly more bulkier costumes. But other than that, they look pretty much the same as they do.
Oh yeah, they wouldn't have gone too far removed. I mean, it was Stoic Gem 555 on Spotify asked that question. Which Sontaran design do you prefer? The blue from this two-parter, or the grey design from Flux, or the black design from Classic Who? But like, arguably, the design that we used in War of the Sontarans is basically the original one, and I like the original one. It's still
that's what the
very
Flux one looks like. It's kind of a bit more armorified, and it's kind of got like a
there is
tool
this kind
belt
of like.
And...
There's like a medieval vibe to it. And
yeah,
I think
there
if
is
I remember
a bit.
rightly, one of the old Sontaran episodes is like set in the medieval times. Correct me if I'm wrong, people in the comments, but I think there is one, because I think the Sontaran like crash lands at a castle or something. But we see the new Sontarans in Sarah Jane Adventures as well. And obviously we see Strax on multiple times, which we will talk about
I
past
think
Rattigan in a moment, because there is a question about it.
Yeah. I think with the Sontarans, they're very much like a kind of statement piece. I mean, I know obviously we could say the same about the Daleks, but the thing with the Daleks is there's been so many factions of Daleks that you can arguably redesign them kind of as many times as you like, as long as the base shell idea is there, as we've seen with like the Power Ranger Daleks, as we like to call them, you know, and versus like the Time War Daleks. I mean, the Time War Daleks are my favourite design ever. Like, they're just gorgeous. And like the Power Ranger Daleks were just so big and bulky and just like unnecessarily plastic.
Hence why they got dropped.
Yeah.
Because the reaction was so bad to them.
I don't feel like the Sontarans have obviously had that. I mean, obviously the Daleks have been in far more Doctor Who than any other enemy ever. But the Sontarans are very much that kind of thing, because they're a clone race and because they're, you know, their whole purpose is to just be this perfect war machine. If they have perfected that, as is explained so many times in this episode, like, you know, they have no weaknesses except the tiny punch hole on the back of their neck, then why would they change their design? So I think for me, both the designs from like the Flux episodes and this episode are kind of just as good as one another. I feel like if you put this exact design of the Sontarans in the Flux, you wouldn't be like, oh, that looks like it's from the early noughties or late noughties. Like, you just wouldn't really think about it like that, because it kind of holds and stands up in the modern era as well.
Yeah. I think it's also down to the fact that we're still only 4 years into Doctor Who, into the reboot at this point. So the idea of playing upon overt nostalgia hasn't really stuck. You know, obviously we did get that a lot with, obviously, like the Chibnall era did lean a bit more onto playing with more nostalgia, because obviously we had more of the more older TARDIS interiors. Obviously the Fugitive Doctor's TARDIS interior is like a more modern spin on the original interior. Arguably the new TARDIS interior
new one is
a spin on the original one.
I love Shooty's TARDIS.
Yeah, I know.
It's so nice.
And you've got even like the Cybermen in Ascension of the Cybermen. They have a very more bulky kind of design that harks back. I think they're the best looking Cybermen that they've ever designed, honestly. They hark back to the original ones. So at this point in time, you wouldn't have really had that need to do something with a classic villain, like an overtly classic villain. Because even when you get to Davros at the end of the series, spoilers, he's got that kind of modern twist, you know, the skirt of his wheelchair life support thing is more reminiscent of the Time War design, which canonically would make a lot of sense, but, you know, fundamentally it's still the same character. But the idea that the Sontarans were redesigned visually makes sense, because it's like, it's easy means for merchandising. It really points out that it's like, this is the new series of Doctor Who. This is still new. It's still quite sparkly. You know, arguably, this was the Doctor Who at the height of its popularity, at least at that era.
Yeah.
Hence why the BBC were so concerned about casting Matt Smith and even doing Series 5 in the first place. So, yeah, as you say, Sontarans as a character, as an enemy, they're not so much one note, because as you've said, there's a lot that you can really dig into about, you know, conversation about war and, you know, the deeper meaningful stuff behind Sontarans as a narrative,
a race
thing. Yeah.
So
the idea that they've kind of subverted that by doing something different to make it seem like there's a cowardly nature to it, as much as the Doctor sees straight through that. He obviously understands that something's different here. But then the idea of, you know, using Atmos, poisoning the planet, making it into clone food and turning it into a breeding planet, I hadn't actually really remembered how solid the overall sort of arc of this two-parter actually was. Like, it might seem a little bit kind of
off-piste,
silly, like not so much like a Deus Ex Machina, because it's not, but like how it's just suddenly just, oh, we could just, you know, burn the sky out. But I know the Doctor wanted to leave that till last, because obviously, as something that I hadn't really clocked upon, would be the fact that if he did do that, the Sontarans would retaliate by just nuking the planet, because they're more than capable of doing so. So while that does come at a bit, like, while that we've built this thing, at least the Doctor was aware of the fact that he could do something like that at Rattigan Academy, hence why he really needed to get back there.
Yeah.
He knew that was a possibility and only wanted to do it once he knew that he had the real Martha back in his arms. It does seem to come up a bit quick and kind of wraps up quite quickly, but I think the fact that it rolls straight into, oh, balls, they're going to start, properly invading now. We need to get ahead of this. It kind of takes the fact that we do, I think if it was literally the case of, the Doctor shoots the sky and we call it a day, the whole two-parter would have fallen flat on its arse, I would argue. But because it rolls into, oh dear, they're going to invade.
There's still danger, yeah.
It keeps the momentum going enough that when you look at it from stood back and you look at the whole thing and you do think, it does feel a little bit sudden, but I think they managed to keep everything going by it not being
that's
the end.
one of the things I thought when we were watching it was the fact that he has this... thing of shoot the sky, flame everything, even though it doesn't set the earth on fire, which is just such a weird...
I definitely
We were talking about it, the science of that whole section is a little bit wishy-washy.
There would definitely be some more fallout from that.
There would. Especially if it was low enough to cover the Eiffel Tower, and the Eiffel Tower not the Eiffel Tower, sorry.
I was going to say... Empire State Building.
Empire State Building. Yeah. If it was low enough to cover the Empire State Building and it just goes over the top of it without touching it or anything, it's kind of like, what? Like,
you could argue it's just some sciencey stuff, but I would have been like, hey, Commander, can you just ring up all of your buddies, ring up the UN and just say, just be prepared to put out a few fires. Yeah. But at least that's better than everyone dying.
But also, surely the animations department could have just put it a few inches above the peak of the Empire State Building. How hard would that have been?
Again, I guess you could look at it and go, this is a visual representation of just how close this could have been to the end of the world.
But anyway, not the point. My point is that when we were watching and that whole sequence kind of happens and you get that dramatic swell of music, the crescendo of, oh my God, we're saved, everything's okay. And then all of a sudden the music just goes and switches straight back to that I don't know what theme it would be called, but it's a very common theme used in this era of Doctor Who, which is that do 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 do. It kind of sounds like Perry the Platypus, if you know what I mean, do 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 do, just going back into the fray of things and immediately kind of switching from this amazing. I love Perry the Platypus.
I'm gonna have to make an edit of that for Twitter when we post this episode. Every so often I post a random thing. It's we just finished recording. See you on Friday. And it's either have a crumb or it's a picture of a ham sandwich or something.
This is going to be Perry the Platypus. But yeah, anyway, it just rushes straight back into that high beat, up tempo music choice that they always use when the Doctor's running around doing clever things, and it is a real juxtaposition. You don't get time to respect or appreciate the fact that, oh look, he's just saved everybody from being poisoned, because it just kind of immediately goes back in, yeah, but everybody could still die.
This could arguably be worse.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, quick death versus poisoning to death, but
that is true.
I'd rather be shot and die immedially, but the
question of the week, everybody. Happy New Year. How would you like to die?
No, let's not ask that. That's morbid as isn't it? Sorry, I've just swore, but that's morbid as that is
right,
morbid
I'll put a marker in. I'll have to
we'll
bleep you
it.
Or something.
That is morbid as all hell.
Doing more work for me.
Sorry, pal.
Thanks for that. You just get to sit here and talk about it. I have to actually make the thing. God damn it.
Yeah, well, I'm not that clever. I'm not Luke Rattigan. I can't use Premiere.
She's just compared me to Luke Rattigan. Actually, I use After Effects for this, Amy. Get it right. I'm smarter.
Sorry.
Gun to your head. I'm smarter than you.
Great. I mean, we all know that's the case.
I got duped by a baked potato. How clever am I?
At no point did I enter into this marriage thinking, I'm definitely smarter than Rich.
I mean, as Sontarans put it, which I did not recall this being the case, you are a woman.
Yeah, I know. When he said that, he was like, "Oh, that's pretty good for a woman." I was like, "Oh,
bitch, what?" And bear in mind, this two-parter was written by a woman as well. So, I guess you could argue that, the Sontaran race are very... I wouldn't obviously...
they are all male.
Well, I was going to say, there's the whole debate about, they're very much male presenting, whether biological gender is a thing on Sontar. Who knows and kind of who cares? But,
yeah.
I guess the fact that they're aware what a woman is, assumedly that they're aware that the biological binary exists, but Sontarans
yeah, it's not so much
don't.
that... Well, they're clones, aren't they? So I guess they have no concept of gender. But
Maybe
I guess the
just
idea that they're invading a planet, they obviously know about the enemies they're facing, because as a war, kind of, you wouldn't go into battle with an enemy that you didn't understand, would you?
And it's not the first time Sontarans have been on Earth either, so they
Well,
would
quite.
know.
So they obviously know that women exist, but the idea that they have this notion of a gender construct of women being inferior is what kind of does it for me. It's but you are a purely clone race that have no spectrum of gender, and yet you still think that women are inferior.
Based Sontarans.
There's so much you could unpack there, but
I didn't just say that.
No.
We're bringing the humour back. There's been a lot of very deep character stuff, and then we're just going to swing it back towards simping and hating on women, which is apparently what we do.
Which is, sure, why not?
Welcome to Escaping Kasterborous. We love aliens and hate women.
Even though one of us is a woman.
Try and guess which...
Sorry, did I give away the game
I would
there?
say who's got the bigger wardrobe, but annoyingly now that's you.
Yeah, well, you used to have the biggest wardrobe.
Who
has more clothes?
When I was a student, I had a walk-in wardrobe, and that was amazing.
And that was outright. Let me just to put it into perspective for those who don't understand how big of a deal this is. Rich being the only, this only one of two straight men in our entire house of 6 people, which had 2 women, 2 gay men, 2 straight men. He had the walk-in wardrobe.
Hell yeah, I did.
Just
not to say that your sexual orientation or your gender dictate who gets the walk-in wardrobe, but
no. But I just mean
wardrobe.
Out of the 2 specific people in our household, Benny and Jordan had a lot of clothes, and you had. I
still had
wardrobe.
the most. Yeah. That's just what I do.
Yeah.
Anyway, enough of gender norms.
But no, we were talking about the idea of the Sontarans being pretty good for a woman.
Angry potato misogyny. You love to see it.
We love it. Can I go down and stab the potatoes in the fridge?
I am making roast potatoes later, so if you want to take your rage out by peeling potatoes and not peeling my testes, then that would be great.
I'm just going to go to Argos and buy a Mr. Potato Head toy and just launch him at the wall. Just going to launch a war on all potatoes.
There's the question then, folks. How do you release anger? Amy does enjoy mashed potatoes a lot.
I do.
So she even dreams about it. So, the idea, I think that's where all of Amy's kemped up rage that usually builds because I'm being annoying is taken out on her making the most delicious mashed potatoes you've ever eaten.
For context, Rich says I dream about them. That's not just a random thing. I sleep talk all the time, and
mostly it's the F word.
Yeah, it is. I'm a potty mouth. Blame my Glaswegian granddad for that one. I once rolled over in my semi-awake, semi-asleep state and I was just thinking about mashed potato, as if I needed to justify my thought process in the middle of my sleep. Because obviously...
This is what I married. A simp for potatoes.
Look, potatoes are amazing. You just can't blame me on that one, can you?
I'm making some banging roast potatoes later, so I can live with that.
But anyway, what were we talking about?
Sexism. War of the Sontarans and the War of the Sontarans. That's Sontaran Stratagem and the Poison Sky. Honestly, has actually aged a lot better than I thought. I always sort of remembered these 2 episodes being kind of fine, but I think while I wouldn't say they are they're not going to be super duper up there, but it's everything about it was pretty solid. I mean, there are certain things you could argue, while you could have being a plant inside unit needed to be a full clone, unlike just a simple hypnosis-y thing with Martha. Amy made a good point when everyone else is all coughing and spluttering and dying and stuff, and there's the two soldiers that were brainwashed at the beginning and they're both absolutely fine.
Yeah, because when he asks like what's happened to them, it's all, it's just a simple form of hypnosis. It's like, yes, they still have human bodies, so they would also be choking to death. Like, it doesn't stop, hypnosis does not stop you from breathing gas.
Well, again, but little plot hole that you could kind of just, there's always going to be little plot holes and bits and pieces in terms. They do get shot, don't they? Yeah, there are always little bits and pieces to pick apart. But as a whole, I did enjoy this two-parter more than I actually, not so much more than I expected, but more just, it was good fun. And honestly, to wrap up, it was very, very emotional every time Bernard Cribbins was on screen.
Oh my God, I was literally fighting tears when she was running down the street towards him to hug him. I was like, Gramps, can you not? Like, you're literally... It's so sad, and
it's like it's a lovely. I literally turned to Amy and said this when we were watching. Just like, it's a lovely scene, regardless. But it's even more difficult to watch knowing that Bernard isn't here anymore. Even though, as I did, even when he was saying goodbye to her again, when she went gallivanting off with the Doctor again, while we still have a lot of time with Wilf left to go, arguably a lot more than what we've had so far. We know that, Russell did him a huge service by, making sure that Wilf is still alive in the Whoniverse, and quite frankly always will be. I really hope that we don't get, kind of actually as a very apt parallel to draw, obviously Nicholas Courtney, Alistair Lethbridge-Stewart isn't in this episode as a two-parter, which we were discussing kind of why was it illness, was it unavailability? I wouldn't have said it was unavailability because he was an old guy by this point. I don't know how much work he was getting. He did obviously rock up in the Sarah Jane Adventures, which was lovely. We do get a lot of nods and mentions to Brigadier Lethbridge-Stewart. If you don't know, he was a major character back in the classic era of Who, whenever unit was involved
in this series, obviously.
Yeah, basically the equivalent of Kate Stewart. Well, yeah, quite literally.
Hence why they're related.
Hence why they're father and daughter, yeah. But then he gets kind of brought back as a Cyberman, which was a bit like, I get that it's kind of nice and you have that salute and, there is an awareness that the Cyberman knew that it was like...
Was that Moffat?
Yes, it was Capaldi's era. But it was a bit like... it's kind of it's almost the much worse approach to doing things like Grand Moff Tarkin in Rogue One, where they bring back Peter Cushing as a like a deep faked sort of thing, in the same way they did with Carrie Fisher as well in Rogue One. It's that kind of like, should you really do that? Are we bringing back people from the dead? Like, that's not fun. And obviously the fact that it was like, Nicholas Courtney had unfortunately passed away by the time that they'd done Dark Water in Heaven. What was it? Dark Water, Death in Heaven, for Capaldi's era. When they
there was
had
a lot
this,
of
like,
heaven in Capaldi's era, wasn't there?
A lot of Cyberman Brigadier that was like, it's a little bit tasteless. We're just going to know that Wilf is at the bottom of the garden shooting moles.
Yeah.
Or trying to, because the Doctor's put a force field around them.
And we were listening to, was it the commentary on the episode afterwards that you can watch on BBC? If you go onto iPlayer, after the giggle they posted a re-watch with commentary by Russell. Was it David and
the producer? And I can't remember what his name is.
Yeah, me either. But yeah, and they were talking about the fact that in the original script, they had a whole thing, didn't they, about his character dying or being killed off in universe or whatever it was. And Russell said he just couldn't do it. He could not put that through. Like, it got signed off by so many people. And then he got to that point and he was like, I can't do this. Like, this character
You can't do this to the fan base.
Yeah,
or to the memory of Bernard or to Wilfred Mott.
And I think that was the point, is that it was to memory of Bernard because he was such a poignant character throughout these kind of series of NuWho. And obviously, before we even meet Donna, he's introduced as that character in the newspaper box. Like, is... to get an actor like that who who was such a good person in life and also played this incredible character that so many people of NuWho relate to, I think he made the right choice in, he's just up the garden shooting moles, don't worry about it, he's fine. Because there's no way that you would have felt right knowing that in-universe Wilf is also gone. Like, it's just not the thing, is it? So I'm really glad that they changed that and made that decision.
Yeah. And it's lovely seeing Bernard Cribbins on screen. Obviously, seeing him at the end of Wild Blue Yonder was such a surprise and was so lovely. And it's so good to know that he managed to get that in, because it wasn't long after filming that he died. So it was before they actually filmed the end of The Giggle. It was that sort of short of a window that they actually had with Bernard, hence why at the start of The Giggle, it's just some bloke in a wheelchair. And not
but
actually
they did
Cribbins.
manage to just about kind of avoid it to the point where you wouldn't really know if you didn't know. Like, it was just cut off shots and like changed angles, and
people would know watching it that it wouldn't have been Bernard, because otherwise it would have been front and centre. But people are aware that wasn't a secret, that he's obviously getting on a bit at that point, and obviously had passed away as well. So it's not exactly anything to be really picking apart. But yeah, it's lovely seeing Wilf, and we do get to see a lot more of him. But the next thing we get to see more of is Martha, because she's on board the TARDIS when stuff goes awry, and we also get to see the future Mrs. Tennant in Georgia Moffat as the Doctor's daughter.
How dare she?
We all love and hate you. You lucky woman
she's
who's
fit,
also.
Though.
Oh, she is. Yeah, she's stunning,
and she's
power couple.
Is it Peter Davison's daughter? So I mean, full circle, isn't it?
Well, we'll go over
the Doctor's
the whole...
daughter marries the Doctor.
Yeah, we'll go over
is
that
the Doctor's
whole
daughter.
sort of thing next time on Escaping Kasterborous when we cover the Doctor's daughter. So we hope that you do join us for that one, whenever that may be. Hopefully at some point in February. That's kind of what we're aiming for this year. We're going to try and get at least one out a month. I know it's not loads, but the benefit of the way that the benefit of the way that we do Kasterpod now is the fact that obviously we bundle together two-parters. So if we do 12 episodes at minimum this year, we are comfortably going into series 5. So please do join us for that one.
Did you have any questions about we didn't talk about what's their name, the group with Jenny Strax and that? Did you say you had a question about
Paternoster Gang?
that?
Yes, sorry, there was a Paternoster Gang question. I mean, there were quite a few questions that I didn't really cover.
Yeah.
There was something about the Paternoster Gang. I think it was the most recent question we got. Yes, it was from Zapperfan. Strax, better as part of the Paternoster Gang or not? I can't.
Do we even see Strax in this episode?
Strax isn't it? It's Dan Starkey, because that was what I was questioning the whole way through. The Commander, is it Scorn, something like that.
Bringer of Blood, I just remember his name was.
Commander Score. It's General Stahl and Commander Score. Yeah, Dan Starkey plays that character. Obviously, gets killed off by the commander of unit, the colonel. Sorry, and Dan Starkey comes back as Strax. I mean, Paternoster Gang, I think it's almost too early days, because we haven't actually been introduced to them yet, because they only appear post series 5 when we have
well, it's Matt Smith's era, isn't it?
Yeah, the Silurians get reintroduced, and when you have Madame Vastra, she's obviously Silurian, so we're getting to that point. I mean, if we're going to get very immediate things in, I did get kind of bored of Paternoster, and I didn't know why people were so obsessed with them. Yes, they're kind of fun and silly, and Strax has got some fantastic comedic moments, but at the same time, it feels kind of like, again, as I've already said today, the Sontarans are a bit of a, not such a one-trick pony, but unless you do something more subversive with their storyline, it's kind of difficult to try to do anything with them.
This is a very weird comparison, but I kind of feel like the Paternoster. How do you say that? Paternoster. The Paternoster Gang is a very kind of loose representation of Arnett, Elsa and Olaf a little bit, because you've got like the two kind of women characters that are just like going through doing whatever, and then you've just got this really random short fat bloke as like the comedic relief, and it kind of feels a little bit like Olaf in Frozen. It's like, is there really any point to him? No, but he's the one that everyone cares about, isn't he? So
That's going straight on Twitter. Like, what?
Do you not like?
I mean, I do kind of see what you mean, but Elsa isn't green and she's not also shagging her sister. So, you know.
No, I didn't mean in that respect. I just meant, like, if we're talking comedic relief, is there really a comedic relief greater than Olaf?
Yeah, I get what you mean, but yeah, I think we'll cover the Paternoster gang more. So I can't remember exactly what episode it was they first appeared in. I think it might be the Crimson Horror, or probably earlier than that. I can't
Something
quite
like
remember.
That. I honestly
but yeah,
don't know.
we'll cover that when we get to it. But yeah, the Strax is an interesting departure from the Sontaran sort of approach, the Sontaran characterization. So I'm intrigued to see how. I can't quite remember why he's part of Paternoster gang, but we'll find out. I think there was a lot of. I think they did do some audio dramas, but I think there was always that. Like, people still now, like when they were talking about the fact we're going to get new spin-offs and stuff like that, that they really wanted
still
a
like,
Paternoster. They want a
Paternoster
Paternoster spin-off.
Why?
It's like, really?
There's only so much they can do.
Yeah, and they've had a bit. They had get quite a lot of screen time in the Moffat era, so you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's where we're going to wrap things up today. Hope you've enjoyed listening. You have to join us next time for the Doctor's Daughter. So please do follow us. A single parter, yeah.
That's so weird. I always seem to remember it having like such a vast storyline that I feel like it should cover 2 episodes.
Definitely a very interesting storyline. I do remember how it all pans out. So I'm intrigued to see it all again.
Yeah.
A bit of Donna brilliance in that one. So, yeah, please join us for that one. Please follow us on Twitter at Kasterpod for your memes and, you know, doobie bars when I get around to posting that. And I'm gonna have to post Anna. I'm gonna have to post that Paternoster gang and the Frozen Trio. Just like
you're just gonna have to Photoshop like Jenny's face onto Anna and
no, it's just gonna be like
Vastra.
Yeah, bro, you can copy my homework, just don't make it too similar or something. I need to find
and then just put the Sontaran in over Olaf.
I'm just gonna put them both next to each other. That's what it needs to do.
Yeah.
Anyway, please join us for that one. Amy Hudson, where can they find you on the old socials?
Yeah, I'm Amy Hudson now. That's very interesting. According to my passport as well, so it's all official.
But your
now.
username hasn't changed.
No, it is still Ames_Elizabeth, and that is AIMS.
And that's on Instagram.
That's on Instagram. Sorry, did I not say that part?
No, you didn't, but I know that it's a given, it's just Instagram.
Okay. Well, it's on Instagram, yes. Ames_Elizabeth.
And I am at Pickup Change Toe on everything, basically. I mean, you can follow me on Twitter, but, you know.
No, Rich, they can follow you on X.
No, they can't. They can follow me on Twitter, Amy. We've been over this. It's called Twitter. No one calls it X.
X,
Nobody
formerly
calls it
known
X.
as Twitter.
The only people that call it X are the people who are sucking off Elon Musk because they have nothing else of interest about them and they are just talentless hacks. So anyway, that's my little rant over. Have a lovely rest of your January. I hope, again, that you had a lovely Christmas and New Year and the January blues haven't kicked you down too hard. If you are a fellow games industry employee, stay strong. And if you have unfortunately been let go, best of luck with your work, with finding work going forwards. Otherwise, take care of yourselves. Have a lovely rest of your day. We'll see you next time for some Jenny Doctor Daughter action.
La.
Thank you for that, Amy.
You're welcome.
We'll see you then. Goodbye.
Bye.